interior text file open. You should have your menu 1, which we have completed, your menu 2 that we are currently working on. This is where we left it at the end of class. Last class, we duplicated our top stripe and our bottom stripe. We duplicated the wood texture. We duplicated one of our text boxes over here, and we copied and pasted in some of the additional illustrations out of our clip art file, our Illustrator file, our EPS file out of Illustrator. Just remember, copying out of Illustrator in Photoshop, make sure it's a smart object. That way it's scalable, we can play around with it. Once you bring elements in, remember, some of the features we've been touching a lot is the layer styles over in your layers palette, so we can adjust how the layers interact. That's the easiest way to manipulate images in Photoshop, the simplest way. There's more complicated things as we start blurring and blending and changing light sources and cutting objects out and pasting objects in, like we did with the pickleball player. But the foundational elements here are stackable layers, layers with properties that allow us to interact with objects on each layer so that they are like clear pieces of paper where the layers are interacting. The more pieces of paper you have stacked on top, the more interaction you have. Hence the piece of paper of wood with the illustration on top of it, with the little boxes on top of that, with the little text on top of that, with the categories on top of that. They're pieces of paper, so it's just organization. So if you can't see something or you want to see something better, you play with layer styles, you play with opacity, you stack, change the order of the pieces of paper. By default, you can always fall back on the ability to draw like a rectangular shape with color in it to make sure you can read an object or an element on the page. But we're evolving here in kind of our thinking process from an output. Now we're concentrating a little bit more on output. What a fold is, what safety areas are, what a bleed is, what this thing will look like when it's produced. When you guys give me the menus, I'm going to print them all out, fold them for you, and show you like this is what you produce. This is what this thing looks like. So you can connect the dots between pieces of paper and digital screen. With that all being said, most of the restaurants you go to now have a QR code. You scan it. I mean, we're getting to the point where they don't even print menus anymore, which that annoys me. If I have to work to see the menu at a restaurant, I feel like that shouldn't be something that's expected from the customer. Oh, there's a QR code. You want to see the latest special? Scan that thing and read it on your phone. Like, what happened to the actual menu? I get it. You spill water on it, it gets crinkly, all the things that happen, but I still like to have an actual menu. Like Aventine changes their menu so often, they just print it on a cheap piece of paper, which is perfectly fine. But at least it's on a piece of paper. My phone just buzzed on an Amber Alert. That's the first time that's ever happened here. Okay, all right, so here we go. So in our announcement section for today, there's 3 or 4 backgrounds. Download one of them to your desktop. Just make sure you have one because we want to open it up in Photoshop. So I'm going to tuck this back in. Let me do my, oh, we're recording, so that's good. I don't need the menu 1 right now, so I'm going to close it just so that we have menu 2, because this is where we left ourselves. So here we go. Now, we have these background graphics. Now, something to think about or understand in a trifold menu environment. When you fold the menu, right? So, page 1, we have front cover, back cover, tab. When you go to page 2, the left panel in page 2 is the back side of the tab, the one that folds in. So just know that that panel has to be kind of designed in its own. So the left column needs to be its own thing, because when you start to open up the trifold, that one you can see while the other stuff is covered up. But once you peel that thing back, columns 2 and 3 are like a poster. So the left panel in the interior is its own panel. But once you open the trifold up, panel 2 and panel 3 are like a poster. So we're going to treat them like a poster. So when we set this thing up, we're going to make the left panel its own column of info from our text file, and we're going to make columns 2 and column 3 play by its own rules. We're going to make it like its own image, so we don't have to necessarily stay inside the fold area, because once you open it up, it becomes a postcard, it becomes a poster. Some designers will actually take the interior of the trifold and make the whole thing a poster. I like to make that left panel its own grouping, because if you only partially open the trifold, that should be visible stuff. That should be readable, visible stuff. It shouldn't go across the fold. So let's copy whatever background you downloaded from the announcement, and I want you to put it as the layer above the wood texture inside of menu2.psd. So let's get the background. I chose a little cactus guy because I think he's cute. So I'm going to select all, and I'm going to copy him, and I'm going to come into my Photoshop file, and I'm going to go down to my wood texture layer, and I'm going to paste him. Make sure he's open. And there he is. All right, now you're going to notice that they're pretty big backgrounds. So let's try to get our background guy. I'm going to try to move the cactus so he's kind of over here a little bit. Now, let's see if we can't get this background image where there's a bit of a, if you took the one with the stuff along the top, make sure the stuff is along the top and you can see it under the stripe. If you pick the background where there was stuff collected on the left-hand side, move it over so you can kind of see the stuff on the left-hand side. And now we got to play around with our layer styles. Let's make sure that we can see everything. So I'm going to play around with some of my layer styles. I'm going to play with my opacity. So let's crank him down a little bit. Oh, I moved my wood by mistake. So let's move that back. I'm going to lock this for just a second and move my wood back over. There it is. So let's see if we can't kind of get this softly in the background a little bit. So here's my little cactus guy back there. So whatever background you picked, let's just kind of get it back there so we can still see all the elements. It just gives us another little dimension, because when we make this thing one big poster, column 2 and column 3, we're going to be able to interact with that image in the background a little bit. We might make a copy of just one of the objects and bring it to the front. And we're going to play around with this thing a little bit once we get our layer in the background over there. So let's get our background layer over there. And then once you have it copied and you kind of have the opacity set back on it, or you change the layer style to be overlay or soft light or something that kind of sets that thing in the background, let's go into our text file. We've got to replace this duplicated layer of text with the text from our text file. So here's the text file. So let's just see what the categories or the copy was of the text file. It looks like we have their authentic Mexican food, and then a description of their enchiladas and street tacos. I think I want to take the enchiladas and street tacos information and put it inside of this text box that we have. We're going to break this into multiple text boxes so we have a little bit more flexibility with layout. So we're going to drop this stuff in. So I'm going to copy just enchiladas and street tacos. So just that little chunk right there. Let's copy that out of our text file and let's replace this text with that information. I'm going to close my interior background. All right, so we have, that is our block of information. So this is the information we're going to try to put on our left-hand panel. So this is kind of the basics of their enchiladas and street tacos. I want to try to fit that over on the left-hand panel under the little elements that we dropped in so far. So let's move that over to the left-hand side. And we're just kind of blocking this stuff in. My Photoshop's having a heart attack, so I'm going to reopen it real quick. So I'm going to move it over here. So this is kind of the area we're going to play with. I'm going to hide so we're just going to try to block this stuff in so we can get a general idea for the layout. I think that is Enchiladas Rojas. Should that be the title where we have combos? I think maybe that is the titles, Enchiladas Rojas. So let's copy that out of our text box here. So we're going to copy the enchiladas out of our text box, just like we did with the other ones, and we're going to put it in. Oh, look how small it is. Holy cannoli. So let's make that a little bit bigger. So we're just going to block this in so that we have our text in the locations we need it. Now, we're just using the same elements from menu 1 into menu 2. So I'm just going to hide some things just so that we can get in what we need to get in. So I'm going to hide the little box. I'm probably going to hide this little pepper, move him over here. So we need to have the enchiladas and the text for enchiladas underneath. I think I'm going to do street tacos too. So let's copy the word street tacos and remove it from there. And I'm going to make a duplicate copy. So we're just using the categories. We're using the categories from menu 1. The same layers, and we're just going to replace it with our categories for this side. So I'm going to make this one street tacos. Let's make this one big again. Oh, too big. So we have enchiladas Rojas as a category, we have street tacos as a category, and we have the text that is our descriptions as a layer. So just as a reminder, we're replicating this. So we're copying the stripes, we're copying the wood background, we're copying the categories, and we're copying the text boxes, just so that the interior has the same elements. Now you will notice, because I did a watermark of that background image, it's starting to make this thing more brown, kind of like wood tony, than the white washed wood inside the outside cover. So I'm going to play around with that a little bit. But let's get in our text box and our categories. So I'm going to lock this, and I'm going to move my... Now, we have room now at the bottom. See how we have room down here? So we'll be able to put a picture down here, or maybe one of our little illustrations down there. So we're just using what we need, which is this amount of copy, and we're trying to play with the placement. This left panel needs to be its own panel. The center and the right panel we can make like as a postcard. So we're actually going to make bigger text boxes for the rest of our information, so you can kind of see how it flows. If you love boxes behind the text, we can use one of these boxes like we did for the other one. the other cover. This is kind of personal choice as far as whether you like those boxes or not. The key is that you just want to make sure it's legible and readable, and that both panels are using the same colors and the same styles. So if you make categories, you want to make the categories the same. If you do text boxes, you want to make sure they're the same size. If you use boxes to block in areas of content, you want to make sure you use the same boxes. So you'll notice by duplicating layers, this rectangle has the same rounded corner on the outside panel as it does the inside panel. So we're just trying to take function and form and make it look good. A trifold folds into 3 individual panels, but when you open it up, it becomes one big poster. So we're going to do the very best we can with making the interior panel, the inside of this menu, one pretty poster, one good poster. Now that we have our 2 categories, street tacos and enchiladas, we have our descriptions of both dropped in. We have, in essence, 3 text boxes, one for enchiladas, one for street tacos, and one for the descriptive text. So we have 3 layers. Now, we need to duplicate our descriptor box. So this little box right here, we need to duplicate that layer because we're going to use it as our template for this area of our menu. So let's make a duplicate copy of our enchilada. Now, the difference with this box is we can actually make the box bigger. We can make it cover both the second and third panel, which is going to give us a lot more real estate to be able to create a prettier picture, a more attractive menu, because we're not tied to the lumina. Everything is just text. Everything falls into the 3 columns, and there's no actual style to it. It's just text. So we're going to be able to do a little bit more. So if we make a duplicate copy of our text on the left-hand side and we move it over to the middle, let's switch to our text tool. So let's switch to our text tool and click our mouse inside of the text tool box. Now, the reason we did that was we can change the properties of this text box. So let's stretch it out. So you see how we're stretching it out? Let's make it cover both the second panel and the third panel. So you see how I made my text box bigger? We're going to make it cover both the second panel and the third panel. But make sure you give it a little room. So the margin guide here, the margin guide here, the margin guide at the bottom, and the margin guide at the top. Let's make sure that the box fits inside of those spaces, because this text box is setting the properties for our second and third panel. So let's just make it a picture window inside of a picture window. So you can kind of see how my box is there. It goes along the edges and goes to the top. Now, this is one individual big box, which means all the font sizes, the alignment tool, which is what is at the top up there, is all set inside of here. So let's copy our text from our interior text file. So let's see what else we have to get in here. We have burritos, we have salads, and we have traditions. Let's copy the burritos descriptions next. So let's take these and copy them. So just the burrito section. And so let's copy that. And let's put it inside of this text box. So we're going to paste it right there. So there's all of our burrito information. It looks like we're going to get primarily burritos inside of our spread here. We'll see what we can do, but it looks like we might get primarily burritos. Now that we made this its own text box, let's change the alignment. Let's align this to the left. So let's align it to the left. So now we have our burrito description. We have a big text box, and we're going to design this like a big 2-panel design. So we have a big text box that kind of covers the second and third panel. Now, what I'd like you to do is let's make a duplicate copy of our street tacos layer, and we're going to label each burrito as like the fancy category text that we have over on the left-hand side. So we're going to use all the same formatting just to dress this thing up a little bit. So let's take our street taco layer. So let's find our street taco layer, and let's duplicate it. So here it is. I'm just going to move it over. I'm going to lock my enchiladas layer because it keeps wanting to select that. So I'm going to move my street tacos over here. And we can actually duplicate the street tacos layer several times. So let's duplicate it. And let's move it. My burritos layer. Let me lock that for a minute. So I'm going to lock the burrito layer. Stop moving. I'm going to move my next one to here. So you're just seeing I'm making duplicate copies of my category text, and I'm going to put it in the little space next to each of the burrito titles. So I'm going to duplicate that. I'm going to duplicate this. A lot of what is design is the process of using elements over and over again. Where the genius comes in, or where the creativity comes in, is how you take what the client gives you and format it in a way that is attractive. Like, what do I have to do here to make what you gave me look good? What you gave me communicate what you want it to communicate. Part of it is just the whole wrestling match of, you know, what do I have to have? And how can I make it look good? Like, how can I communicate the message effectively? And so I'm just making copies of each of those titles, and then we're going to change each of those street tacos to say burritos, burrito barbacoa. Anyone had a burrito barbacoa before? Yeah. Is it any good? Interesting. Burrito Delight, Super Burrito, Burrito Supreme, Burrito Mexicano. Oh, I did not pass Spanish very well in high school or college. And Burrito Wrap. All right, so let's change our text here. So we're going to change this one to, make sure it's all caps, burritos. We're going to change this one to burrito barbacoa. We're going to change this one to super burrito. We're going to change this one to burrito supreme. And we're going to change this one to burrito Mexicano. Rolos de fajita. And burrito wrap. Now, when I started the whole menu process, I talked about using text files to just have copy and paste in. It makes life a little bit easier when you have copy that you can copy into and paste into. So I spend a lot of time organizing my files before I start any kind of design, build, layout, anything. All right, what pictures do I need? What kind of background elements can I find? Are there illustrations or vector graphics I might want to use? Do you have a decent logo I can use? All right, and what text do I have to have on this thing? And once I kind of collect all my assets, a text file, EPS files, JPEGs, anything I might need, that's when I start formatting the project into its requirements. Where are the safety areas? What are the measurements of this thing? Does this thing get cut? Does this thing get folded? How do people interact with it? I might spend time like seeing what other people do. Like, what are the other Mexican restaurants doing? Like, what is the style of their menus and what color palettes do they use? It doesn't necessarily mean I'll use the same. It just means I learn a little bit about what they're doing so that I can make sure that I'm meeting the customer at the same level that maybe the potential competition is meeting the customer at. So now that we have our categories made in their own style, the same style as the outside of the menu, now that we have the required text for our second and third panel in there, now we can start playing with spacing and layout. We have all the parts that we need here. So we need to remove the titles from the big text box, so where it says burrito and super burrito and all that, we have to remove that. And I think we need to add an extra space between each of the groupings of information so that there's room for our category titles. So I think that's probably our next step. Now that we have all the elements we need to kind of reformat this thing. So I'm going to go up to my burritos text. I actually had that locked. And I think I actually want to move that text box down below my category names. So I'm going to reformat my layers a little bit just so that my category text is sitting on top of. So these layers are on top of that layer. I think it's going to make my life a little bit easier. And so I'm going to remove the categories now from my text box. So you see how I removed the word burrito? So now I can move my burrito text over. So now I can reposition the beginning of my text box. Now, just food for thought, now that we're kind of making this thing a poster, a little bit more like a poster. You still should try to, from a visual standpoint, use the same baseline for both of these categories. So you see how enchiladas is kind of sitting on this horizontal space? When I place the burrito text, I'm going to try to sit it on the same baseline. Even though this is a fold line, so when you open it up, you're going to see this first. You want to make sure that these line up so they sit on the same line. You don't want it to be like this one's a little bit higher than that one, or this one's a little bit lower than that one, because when you open it up as a full poster, you're going to notice that they aren't lined up, that they're not sitting on the same line. So I use my guides a lot. So if you don't have rulers running along the top of your page and the left-hand side of your page, you can do Command R, and it will give you those rulers, and it'll give us the ability to line elements up. So we're going to just try to make sure they're kind of lined up. So I'm going to do that. Then I'm going to remove my burrito barbacoa. Am I even pronouncing that right? Somebody help me out here. Save me. Save me from my Spanish lingo. Yeah, I do need Burrito Delight, it looks like. Yeah, I've got to add Burrito Delight to this thing. I think I missed it somewhere. So, yep, good catch there. So let me get rid of Burrito Delight. And I'm going to make a copy of this. Oh. So here's my copy. Burrito Delight. How are you guys doing in the back corner over there? Are you doing okay?
I think so.
All right. Burrito. Burrito Supreme. Where's my other burrito? Thank you for helping your neighbor. All right, burrito wrap. So what am I missing here? The bottom was burrito. Oh, here it is. The Rolos. Beautiful. Good job. All right, excellent. Yes, ma'am.
How did you stretch out the text?
Okay, so now if you switch to your text tool, so let's switch to your text tool. Make sure you're on text tool. Yeah, switch to your text tool. Yeah, very good. So tap your text tool inside of that big paragraph. So anywhere inside there, let's just make sure we're locked. Yep. So let's click on there.
Okay.
Now, when you click on there, it gives you your text container. So once you have your text container, you can change the properties of the text container.
Okay.
If you had your move tool selected, it'll skew or distort it by stretching the box. But now we're actually in the property. So there's handles around that box. So you see the little handle? Yep, yep. So you can just stretch it. So just move it that way.
Okay.
So now we have it. Now, once you're in the text tool and you're selecting the properties of the text container, we can do things like change the alignment. So you can double tap inside that text box just to highlight the text inside of there. So let's just get that all selected. Or you can do Command A. Yeah, and let's just do left align. So you see up to the top, those are your alignment properties. Perfect. There you go. So now we have our box, everything that's required is in a container that fits the amount of space that we want that information to cover. And now it's just massaging that text. So now that you have all your categories, we just need to delete the categories from the paragraph. I'd add an extra return in there so it gives you a little bit more room, and then you kind of slide the things. We're just trying to create this thing as the tab that opens up is all by itself, and then the rest of it is one big advertisement or one big poster. When you open it up, it looks a little different because the left-hand side is its own column of text, and second and third column is a bigger kind of advertisement. But remember, this is folded. So more than likely you're interacting with this thing in one of the panels being at least semi-shut. So if one of the panels is semi-shut, the opening of it allows us to then have a little different design of it because they're interacting with it as they open it. So, and what I try to do is make sure each panel is a panel that's based on importance. So the right side of menu 1 is the cover, the middle panel of menu 1 is the back, which normally is the address, the phone number, desserts, drinks, things that people would order really in theory last, even though they always ask you, do you want your drink order first? And then when you open it up, specials or something that is their main thing is the left-hand panel, and then the next two panels on the inside is like a big ad or poster. So it gives it a little bit more style. Now, we've got to put 3 illustrations inside the negative space of that right-hand panel. The reason we made it left align is to give us what's called ragging the text. And by ragging the text, it means hard line on the left for left align, and then based on the length of the line is how the negative space is created on the right-hand side. If you right align it, it's called rag left, which means the text goes like this on the left-hand side. So we're generating a rag on the right-hand side of our text box to give us negative space to put little images. So we can put photos, we can put illustrations. It's negative space, so it gives us a chance to make it look pretty now that we've done the requirement, which is the menu items that you want people to spend money on. So we copied over illustrations, but we could do pictures too. But let's format our 3 illustrations over on that right-hand panel in the negative space. Now, they don't have to be all the same size because the rag shape has different levels of negative space. Some of the space is bigger, some of the space is smaller. But we want to scale them down so that they fit in the negative space. And we probably want to try to make them like line up a little bit. So like as you move the 3 objects, try to make them either center aligned or make them kind of feel like they're aligning to the right side of the illustrations. Try not to just stagger them. Try to make them feel like they're all part of one thing when we make them smaller. So if you don't have any little icons or illustrations over here yet, let's copy them out of that Illustrator file and paste them in. But I do believe that we had 3 at the end of class. So let's click on each one of those. So we're going to click on it. I'm going to lock my text layer just because it's really big. So there it is. So let's scale this little guy down. So I'm going to grab the corner and scale him down a little bit. And I'm going to move him into this negative space, right? So I'm just going to move him into the negative space. And I'm going to hit enter or return. So there he is. Now, you're going to see from the text, look at all the negative space we have here. So we just want to find a spot kind of in the negative space up here where this little illustration is going to line up. And then I'm going to click on this one, and I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. But look at the problem with this negative space. See how there isn't as much room? There isn't as much room in this area of it. So I think I'm going to have to make this a little bit smaller so that I can find a spot to kind of fit this second thumbnail. So I'm going to put it kind of in that spot right there. So we have kind of a bigger burrito image, and then we have kind of a little smaller illustration. And you'll notice that we have a third negative space right here. So let's see if we can't find a spot for this one, kind of in this negative space. So I'm just going to kind of try to move this little guy over there. All right, so we're letting the output, which is a trifold brochure, determine the panels or the spaces for information. So that's kind of number 1. Number 2 is we're letting the text that's required in the output dictate our positive and negative space. How many words do we have to put on this thing? The more the words, the bigger the challenge. And then thirdly, we're then trying to figure out how can we dress this thing up using illustrations or pictures or some kind of graphic to make this thing more appealing. So if I was Lumina, I would have put little icons of coffee cups, little salad bowls. I would have done something in their trifold so it wasn't just 3 panels of text on the back, 3 panels of text on the front. Their trifold is extremely boring. It is utilitarian and it is functional, but it really lacks style compared to the actual store itself. Like, it's a pretty stylish, funky place, and their trifold is brutal. Now, I do see we have a little tiny spot down here. Now, this is a really good opportunity to kind of do a little bit of branding. So why don't we duplicate our logo layer from menu 1 and put our logo down here in the corner. I think it would be kind of nice to put our logo down here. So we can either put it over here or we could put it over here and kind of move a pepper or some kind of illustration over here. But these 2 spots right here are perfect to put a logo. Because remember, when it's opened up, if it's laid on a table, people might not know what the company is. So if you unfold this thing and lay a bunch of them on the table, there's no branding on the inside that tells you kind of who this menu is for. So let's see if we can't get a version of the Las Palmas logo from our menu 1 and make it smaller and put it either over here or over here. So that'll give us, in essence, 5 little icons or kind of like an odd number of icons with logo in one corner. I tend to like it in the right-hand corner because that's the last thing that people read. And so let's see if we can't kind of get that logo down in the corner. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to control click on that layer and do duplicate layer, and we're going to duplicate it over to menu 2. Just like we did with the stripes in the wood. So we just control click on that layer and duplicate it. Now, we rotated the logo because that's how they did it on their menu. When you duplicate the layer of the logo, because it's rotated, don't rotate it back. Keep it rotated just like it was on the cover, because I have a feeling they actually never write it flat. I have a feeling that it's always rotated slightly. So whatever that rotation is that we did on the front cover, and everyone kind of did their own level of rotation, just make sure that when you duplicate the layer, it's the same rotation. So don't re-rotate it. But we do have to make it a little bit smaller. So let's make it a little bit smaller. Remember, hold down shift if this little lock up here isn't turned on. If this little lock doesn't look like that and it looks like this, make sure you hold down shift. If not, just make sure that it's locked by clicking that little button so it scales it proportionately. Now, the reason we copied the smart object in was because it's scalable. So that thing will print beautifully, whether it's small, whether it's big, whatever it is. Very good. So trifold brochure, it's form and then function. How does the thing fold? What do we need to define it as in order to kind of manipulate it? So form first and then function. Once you go to function, you have to go to what do I need to put on this thing? And in this case, we had the back cover, the front cover, and the tab on one side, and then the interior spread on the other side. Form, then function. All right, let's organize the words. What words need to go where? Let's make sure they all fit and they're all the same size. And then lastly, let's make it pretty. And so the trifold is a form, then function process. How does this thing get outputted? What does it look like? And then let's make it communicate what we need it to communicate. Very good. This is what we need to turn in for our canvas. So we need menu page number 1, which we've already completed, and menu page number 2, which we completed in class today. If you're still tinkering with it, it's not due till Sunday. Let's make sure that we have it looking like this, and you can give me menu 1 and menu 2 as the Canvas submission. On Friday, we're going to learn about Photoshop animation, like making things move in Photoshop. So I want to do like energy drinks or something. So for my lecture, we're going to do Starbucks double shots, because that is my guilty pleasure. I could drink those 24 hours a day. So that is going to be ours. If there is something you like that is along the energy drink line, research it a little bit, collect a couple of pictures, and we're going to learn how to animate inside Photoshop. All right, gang. Very good. Make sure by Sunday, you turn in your 2 sides of your menu. I did record this, so I'll post it in the announcement section in a little bit.